I will call to order the special meeting of the Police Commission on Monday, December 3rd at 5:05 p.m. Let us,
December 13th.
jeez Louise, December 13th. Let's start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Separation of church and state.
It's a good thing.
I was gonna say amen.
I'm gonna say play ball. The next item on our agenda is correspondence. We don't have any correspondence, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Moving on, approval of the minutes for December 6th, 2021. Do you have the minutes?
I did.
You don't have the minutes?
I got another.
Oh, well,
Wait a minute. No.
I have one copy which I will share with everybody.
Perfect. Yeah, sorry, those were in the packet that went out to the homes.
Copy. You still make it like a-
Did you do that?
Are you kidding? Just stuck me in the side of the head.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion for the approval of the December 6th Police Commission special meeting minutes is approved. Okay. Next item on our agenda is old business, the fiscal year 23 budget. I will turn it over to the chief.
Good afternoon, everybody. I provided you with two different pieces of paper just to replace the current ones or the ones that I sent around. The reason for the replacement was in the fiscal year 2022 column, I had a couple old numbers in there. So adding the correct numbers in there, the increase on the right side went down, so it didn't affect, the budget. I guess if you're looking at it, it didn't affect it negatively. It actually brought the numbers down. So that was the reason for the change on that. What this is, the spreadsheet that says 5 officers and 1 accreditation specialist is what we have been discussing at the meetings, but adding 5 additional officers and that 1 accreditation specialist. Where that has hit the largest on that budget is in the full-time account. So those were all added in there. And then all the sort of incidentals of equipment and uniform going to the academy and such were added in those proper funds. There's a note down below, each officer, each new officer does not have to go to the police academy. They are not required to have a police uniform, an academy uniform, if they're already certified. And about 50% of our last group of hirees have already been certified. So I just sort of took an average there of what it would cost to hire a new officer that goes to the academy and one that does not, just for some decent averaging there, and that's the number that I used. That's where we are with that one. The second one is just what I'm calling a static, with no additional officers or all the added things along with the officers. So. And so that sort of met some of our fiscal 23 priorities. In both of those, I did add the 1 hour per day for the part-time police clerk, so I didn't consider that as an addition of a person, it's just an hour a day. So in both of those spreadsheets, that's included in there. And the one with the 5 officers and 1 accreditation specialist does really hit most of those, if not all of those priorities that we had talked about in the last 2 meetings. I also provided you with a fiscal 23 service improvement request form, which is what the town asks me to submit for service improvements, which would be an officer. And it just gives you a breakdown of those costs. A lot of those costs are not in our budget, in the police budget. It's this one here.
Yep.
Okay.
After that, I'll pack it at home.
Okay. So as you can see in the bottom of this one, we average between 79,800 and 84,500 for each additional officer. And as you can see in this one, it's closer to 131,000 because of the benefits and the other things that come out of the town budget and not the police budget. But that's just for informational purposes. So if you happen to see in a slide that the addition of 1 officer, equates anywhere from 125 to 132,000, that's because it includes all that, but not all that hits your budget. The next form or another document in there is the rate of sworn personnel per 1,000 residents. It's nothing new from when we discussed that the last time, but again, just there as a reference point. And then the 6-year capital non-recurring plan. Some of these things have been on here for quite a few years. It's just a plan. But what we did end up adding to this since our last meeting was at the very bottom, the radio, phone, recorder, and dispatch for $19,000. We're still trying to work that out to see if we actually need that, but it looks like part of our radio communication upgrade that we have done, our current recorder, which records all of the radio traffic and as well as the phone traffic, will not work with our new system. It will not work with digital. So we're trying to figure out how that came to be, why our contractor did not discover that, and if we have to come up with something. So I wanted to make sure we had sort of a placeholder there and something in mind that we will definitely need something, just not sure how we're going to get there.
Are we having the stuff recorded now at this time though?
Yeah.
It's still working?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And all the other things on there, under the body worn cameras and car cameras. So it was that 46,158 for several years. As we had talked about, we wanted cars to have, the SRO cars to have MDTs and to have in-car cameras. So that has been included in that there. So it goes up several $1,000s each year. It's about $7,000 each year. So that's been included in this as well. And then the firearms replacement, we had a more accurate number. We were originally at around 24,000. So it's a more accurate number to be 34,000. So those were the changes since the last time we discussed the CNR. And I believe that's all I have for paperwork for you. If there's any questions about.
I just want to make sure everybody knows that when we were talking about the ACO, I asked you specifically, Officer Rudowitz has additional certifications and licensures. I don't know if that's a proper terminology, but he can like trap bears or.
It's a good word, I like it.
And this would be for just a straight up, I don't say basic, but like.
So it's for the equivalent of what we're doing. I think we're still trying to figure out what's the level of service that we're looking for. I think having Mark Rudowitz here with his tremendous history with law enforcement and his interests, it really grew into a phenomenal position and service to the town. And looking to see is that really the level of service that we want to keep. I think it is. And how difficult will that be to be able to attain that service? So what you're seeing in there is sort of what the natural progression for his position would be. If he will be leaving, but that number will will likely go down to the first step of that grade level. And if we were to look to change that, because there was discussion about changing the salary structure for the animal control officer, that goes through a whole process with the personnel subcommittee and the board of selectmen, and then union negotiations.
Do we have any questions?
There was one other in there, I'm sorry.
Oh, the dispatch.
For dispatch, yeah. And very little changes to that as well. In that, their contract does expire, so there are no general wage increases or anything in there, and we do not factor in a potential GWI. The town handles that side, so the only increase, the budget increase for personnel was around 1% to 2%, which is because half of the group does natural steps anyways, or a quarter to a third of it. So there's not a whole lot of change there.
Questions, comments, concerns?
No, that's what we talked about at the last meeting, was having the budget go forward with 5 and accreditation
So,
specialists.
yeah, so that's where the shift of the numbers, because I know at one point we had talked about 6, but it's the accreditation specialist is, okay.
Yeah, so this one here, the 5 officers and the accreditation specialist,
Is 6 total, it's just,
is 6 total, and we will be able to take advantage of the sworn position, what is now doing accreditation, and move that over to help us do what we want to do with traffic enforcement officers, with the detective division being fully staffed, with us being able to go to and be involved in all these community events that sometimes we may not be able to make because of staffing issues, and to be able to, anticipate reasonable hours and reasonable work for staff.
Yeah, I was a little confused on that number, 6 to 5. Also, you rounded up on the array of officers, because I remember the 1.57 we were
Yes.
talking about.
Hmm?
Now it's turned to 1.6, which I realized is rounding up, but it's also,
looks less bad.
yeah, doesn't look good. Whatever. But my real questions are on the personnel form, this guy here.
Yes.
What is this page serving? What are we doing here with this?
Yep, so it was just a point of reference or information to show the board that, when we add an additional officer for between 79 and 83 or $84,000, that's not really the cost to the town. There are additional costs of the benefits, the medical, insurance.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, things like that. And so this shows what the actual cost is to the town, or projected actual cost is to the town. What hits our budget is between the 79 and 84 for the first year.
But what I would suggest perhaps is in block 4, number 4.
Yep.
That instead of highlighting the fact this is the cost for traffic officer 1, why don't we just say this would be the cost for each additional traffic officer. And then in block 9, I know what there's a difference between the different types of officers, but I just want to keep that number 5 now in front of people's minds all the time, not something less, because it makes it too easy for, I think, people to argue. You're saying you only need 2 here, and that number 9 says you're only, in fact, you're only requesting 1 or 2. And I just
Sure. Yep. Yeah, and so there would be one of these for each officer, but I think I understand what you're saying. See if we can put some additional information in block number 4, that it's traffic officer one of 5 officers.
Or for each, I wouldn't put the number one, I would just say for each traffic officer, each additional traffic officer. But it's not just traffic officers we're talking about detectives, we're talking about.
It is, yeah, and this was just an example of one, but I wanted to identify specifically, I thought that was one of our goals was to identify specifically what the position would be for.
Well, right, but it's, we want 5, not 1 or 1 or 2. And not, the total request is not to fill 1 of 2. It's, our total request is we want 5 officers.
I think it's the total request for this specific
I understand
form,
that.
and then for our next form.
I-
Okay,
I
I
know
see.
that.
So you're saying instead of you would have total request to fill 5 patrol officers.
Or 5 officers.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if it wants to get broken down differently,
So in blocks 4, we would say the patrol officer, and
I
then,
would say for each
okay.
officer.
So that way he's only submitting 1 form versus submitting 5.
Yeah, good, because
Yeah, they're gonna want 5 forms, or 6 forms. They're gonna want one
One
form
form
for each.
position.
they are,
Yeah, that's what I had to do last year. Yeah,
at
and
this meeting coming up,
I'm sorry?
your next submission is gonna require that.
Yes, for service improvements, yeah, and I don't believe that's on the 30th, I think that's on the following. But yeah, for each one, I'll need to submit this, and that's why I tried to sort of say one of, so they don't forget that it's
There's,
not standing here by itself.
But it's not just 1 of 2.
Yeah, so she's 1 of 5.
Yeah, so my thought was this was 1 of 2 for traffic, then it would be 2 of 2 for traffic, but
I understand,
yeah,
but,
we can work, we have time to work on that,
yeah,
figure out what works.
I think we need to work on that. So that it doesn't allow people to easily flip into something like, all right, so you only need 2 of these, well, you're only gonna get 1 of these right now, because that's all you've asked for, to fill 1 or 2. You know, it's only semantics, but I think it's important that we use the proper terminology, because we don't wanna make it too easy for people to.
I'll come up with some wording, some options.
You follow me? You follow my drift?
I'm following you, Drew.
Okay, thank you. And what I'm afraid of is somewhere along the line, there will be the discussion about, well, we don't need to approve them all now, because you won't be able to hire them all in the next year anyway. So why don't we just put down 2 or 3 or something like that? And I would like to try to steer away from that if we can. Because to me, you know, I've been involved in hiring, et cetera. When you got a crunch for hiring of, say, chemical engineers for a particular contract coming in, and you're gonna need 10 of them. You know, you don't start, say, I just want 5. And then after we get to 5, I want another 5. Because the process, as I recall, you know, you spin it up saying, I'm now full mode hiring. And so I'm gonna be hiring, in this case, 5 police officers. And I don't wanna just get out there looking for 1 or 2 and then have to shut down for a year. And you gotta wait till the next time it comes around to, you know, gang up again, because it's harder to do that. And so I, you know, I'd like to constantly reference the fact that we want the 5 approved now. And yes, they may not be fillable now. It's very difficult to hire quality police officers right now, but we need to be out in the field trying to do it. And we're gonna need 5 altogether. And so approve them now. And if they don't get filled, they don't get filled. But we're gonna try to fill them. And we wanna be ready and wanna have the process underway. So it just, if it takes another year, it just keeps flowing. Or if it takes 2 more years, it just keeps flowing. And if the population keeps growing, we may need another one by then. So we want all 5 approved now. You know, that's the bottom line I think we gotta get across. And not get into the game of playing, well, let's just approve about 3 this year, you know, and then we'll do 3 next year. You know, that's just not a good way to do it. And if we can sort of get that across, I mean, most of those folks should understand that.
Yeah.
You can't just play that game. I think it's important that we just go with what we're going with now, you know, we need to do it. And by God, we gotta do it, and so let's do it. I don't know, you disagree or?
No, I agree, and I think we've done a good job thus far,
Yeah.
hitting on that with our correspondence with the Board of Selectmen.
Could you report on that, if any feedback you got on that?
I have no official feedback. My understanding is they had the meeting on December 11th on Saturday. It ran long, so they're gonna have another one to continue forming the goals, but that, they were very receptive to establishing public safety as a high priority. So we'll see how that falls out in the,
Okay.
as the process continues, but
So they didn't just say, okay, well, all right.
yes, they did not say that. Apparently there must have been a good amount of discussion if they've got to carry on to another meeting.
Yeah.
So, hope springs eternal that they are listening to us and understand the urgency of our requests.
Good, okay. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I will, yeah, that's fine.
You're good.
Next, yeah.
All right.
No, I think what Mike was saying, the unity of the mission, the message, keep it focused at 5 and everything that we do.
Concur. Okay. Do I have a motion on the budget? We need to approve this budget,
Well, then we do,
don't we? We need to approve it. We're
at
soon.
some point. When's it gonna be submitted?
The 30th.
4, that's a long time.
Of December.
Right.
It's still a long time. But anyway, I would move acceptance of the proposed budget as presented to us by the department as being one the commission fully backs and supports. And would like to see enacted.
Do I have a
That's my
second?
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now discussion here, oh no, never mind, no discussion.
Any more? No, we already approved it. We did it backwards. Write it down on your list. Any reports? I have no reports.
Rather than
For new business, we had initially had policy discussion for the draft response to the aggression and resistance and custody investigations. I understand you have a meeting on Thursday with the Office of the Inspector General. As that's very pertinent to policy, I would propose that we delay any discussion on that matter. If that is okay with everybody?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All right.
Wait for the meeting to happen.
In that case, we will move on to the final item of our agenda, which is adjournment.
I'd like to move that we adjourn the meeting at whatever time it really is.
5:20. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn this meeting at 5:28 PM of the Police Commission special meeting on Monday, December 13th.